Went to Parkway School and then Stony Lane and Westbrook and Paramus High School and Byrne Community College and then Montclair State University. So this is my old stomping ground here in Paramus. It's nice to see a lot of devotees here doing Krishna conscious activities in Paramus. So nice to see you all. So we're reading today from Srimad Bhagavad-Gita, as it is. Text 27. I'm just going to read the Sanskrit and then the transliteration and then the translation and purport. Normally sing the Sanskrit as well? Yeah? Oh, it's up there, isn't it?
It's not there, right?
Oh, it's not there, okay. Jatasya hi dhruvo mrityur dhruv... Okay. Jatasya hi dhruvo mrityur dhruvam janma mritasya cha tasmad apariharyate natvam shochitum arhasi jatasya hi dhruvo mrityur dhruvam janma mritasya cha tasmad apariharyate natvam shochitam arhasi jatasya hi dhruvo mrityur dhruvam janma mritasya cha tasmad apariharyate natvam shochitum arhasi. If anyone wants to sing.
Jatasya hi dhruvo mrityur
Jatasya hi dhruvo mrityur
dhruvam janma mritasya cha
Dhruvam janma mritasya cha
tasmad pariharyate natvam shochitum arhasi.
Natvam shochitam arhasi.
Any ladies? No? Okay. Jatasya, of one who has taken his birth.
One who has taken his birth.
He, certainly. Dhruva,
Dhruva,
a fact. Mrityu,
mrityu,
death. Dhruvam,
dhruvam,
it is also a fact.
is also a fact.
Janma,
Janma,
birth. Mritasya,
mritasya,
of the dead.
of the dead.
Cha,
Cha,
also.
also.
Tasmat,
Tasmad,
therefore.
therefore.
Apariharye,
Apariharye,
of that which is unavoidable.
of that which is unavoidable.
Arte,
Arte,
in the matter.
in the matter.
Na,
Na,
do not.
do not.
Tvam,
Tvam,
you.
you.
Shochitum,
Shochitam,
to lament. Arhasi,
arhasi,
deserve. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki. One who has taken his birth is sure to die, and after death, one is sure to take birth again. Therefore, in the unavoidable discharge of your duty, you should not lament. Purport. One has to take birth according to one's activities of life, and after finishing one's term of activities, one has to die to take birth for the next. In this way, one is going through one cycle of birth and death after another, without liberation. This cycle of birth and death does not, however, support unnecessary murder, slaughter, and war. But at the same time, violence and war are inevitable factors in human society for keeping law and order. The Battle of Kurukshetra, being the will of the Supreme, was an inevitable event, and to fight for the right cause is the duty of the Kshatriya. Why should he be afraid of or aggrieved at the death of his relatives, since he was discharging his proper duty? He did not deserve to break the law, thereby becoming subjected to the reactions of sinful acts, of which he was so afraid. By avoiding the discharge of his proper duty, he would not be able to stop the death of his relatives, and he would be degraded due to his selection of the wrong path of action. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swaparantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So first of all, I'll offer my respects to all the Vaishnavas here and also the senior Vaishnavas, that I may be able to say something that's beneficial to you all, as well as more to myself, purifying to myself. So I just want to give a little bit of background here, what's happening in the Bhagavad-Gita. So we all know the story of Bhagavad-Gita. Arjuna, who was the warrior, one of the Pandavas, he did not want to fight. He came to the center. He told Krishna, who was his charioteer, bring me to the center of the armies and let me see both sides. So he went there, and immediately when he went there, he started to sweat. The Gandiva started to fall from his arm, and he was very nervous, and he did not want to fight. He told Krishna, I cannot fight. And so now Krishna is explaining to Arjuna, first of all, the characteristics of the soul. The soul being, how he said, the soul is not able to be killed, is not able to be dried or burned with fire or cut with weapons, all these different characteristics of the soul. And then he's now talking about that one who is born is sure to die, and those who die, they are sure to take birth again. So in the unavoidable discharge of your duty, you should not lament. So he was lamenting because he didn't know what his duty was. He didn't know that, it's not that he didn't know, he knew what it was, but he didn't want to perform his duty. He thought, why should I perform my duty? Why should I kill my relatives? Why should I kill my kinsmen? And so Krishna gave him different reasons why he should do. This is like Bhakti Shastri, right? One of the different reasons Arjuna said to Krishna that I don't want to fight. There'll be, all the queens will be widowed, and there'll be sin, and there'll be all these different things that will happen if I discharge my duty. And Krishna, one by one, gave him an answer to all these different things. So when I read this verse, it reminded me so much of our situation in our lives here. Just like Yudhishthir and the Yaksha. The Yaksha said to Yudhishthir, it was the last question, I believe, when he was taking that water and he was about to drink that poison, right? That poisonous water. And the Yaksha said, it was like a riddle, what's the most amazing thing? And Yudhishthir said, the most amazing thing is that we see everyone dying around us. We don't see it's going to happen to ourselves. It's kind of a grim thing, kind of a grave thing to think about, isn't it? But it's actually the reality of our life. Not that we overthink it and we kind of become neurotic or something when we're thinking, we can die at any moment. Of course, we see sometimes our parents, even our grandparents, their parents, everyone has left us. So one day it's going to be our turn also. And so to think that it won't happen to us is a grave mistake. And we have to understand what the teachings of the Bhagavad-Gita actually are. It's not just we're going to die and that's it. But there's so much more that Krishna is giving here. What's the ultimate teaching? Sarva dharman parityaja mamekam sharanam vraja. That surrender unto me, surrender unto Krishna. So, and then he talks about that even though Arjuna knew, or that Krishna told Arjuna that all these people, they're already dead. You're just an instrument of that to happen. That doesn't give the license for murder, slaughter, and war, as Prabhupada says here. But also, those things are necessary to keep law and order. As we know, there's the government needs to have certain laws and orders put forth so the order can be kept. So this birth and death that's been happening to us over and over again, it says, there's a verse that goes, Brahmite kon bhagyavan jeev Guru Krishna prasade pai bhakti lata bij. That Brahmite, all throughout the Brahmanda, we've been going different places. But now, with the seed of bhakti, or the bhakti lata bij that is given to us, now we can actually benefit from Krishna consciousness and the Guru, as the Guru Krishna prasade pai bhakti lata bij. So that's what we're all doing here. That's the whole reason of the Krishna consciousness movement. Otherwise, what is there for us to do in this life that's worthy of, that's permanent? Like, for example, everything that we're doing now in life to maintain ourselves, or even just the karmis, or what do you call the non-devotees, or those who don't know about Krishna consciousness, their lives are only for a certain reason, whether it's just for sense enjoyment. Whatever the senses bring pleasure, it's only on that shallow level. But what is Krishna consciousness for? The Krishna consciousness is bringing satisfaction to our hearts and to our consciousness. And so if we continue to stay on that base level, we won't find that satisfaction in life. The only satisfaction we can find is internally through Krishna consciousness. And when we don't take advantage of that, then there's frustration. You see so much frustration in the world. You see so much depression. You see so much suffering. People are suffering due to want of Krishna consciousness and also internal satisfaction and internal peace. When there's no peace, there's no satisfaction in one's life, then there's always this concept of trying to take from different places. We see, when the electronics industry, for example, like there's the different iPhones that keep coming out. When are we going to understand that actually we won't become satisfied by this item? Of course, we need it for our service and whatnot, but if our only aim is to find satisfaction in material things, you're going to definitely be frustrated. And so, where does that satisfaction actually come from? It comes from practicing devotional service, as Krishna mentions here further in the Bhagavad-Gita, that when you worship Krishna, when you worship Him, this is the actual duty, this is actually the dharma of the living entity. There's that verse that the prime duty of every living being is to perform devotional service which is unmotivated and uninterrupted. Now, what does that mean, unmotivated and uninterrupted? That means that we don't approach Krishna, we don't approach God for something material or for Him to grant our wishes. Then that's like a business interaction. For example, when Narsingadev told Prahlad Maharaj that ask me for any benediction now that now that the story is over and your father is killed and all this has happened. And Prahlad Maharaj said, this is not a business interaction. I didn't worship you to get something from you. So the way we can satisfy our lives and get the pinnacle of bhakti is when we perform devotional service which is unmotivated. It's not for any motivation that Krishna, I want something from you. The only motivation is I want to serve you with love because that is my constitutional position and you are my Lord and my Master. and uninterrupted, that is not interrupted by anything. It actually cannot be interrupted by anything material. Just like now we have this pandemic. It seems like something material, but actually it cannot interrupt devotional service. In some ways it might seem that it did, but actually it didn't. There's nothing that can interrupt it. It cannot be blocked by anything material. So when we perform devotional service in this way is when we can be satisfied and when we can feel satisfaction. Otherwise, after some years, you'll feel some lacking, or you'll feel some dryness in devotional service. I mean, this happens to everyone. Everyone who performs devotional life, after some years, you can feel a little bit, uninspired. It can happen. But if we continue to understand what our aim is, and we continue to follow the tenets of devotional service, the main angas of bhakti. So what are the main angas of bhakti? The Panch Anga Bhakti. Panch Anga means the 5 angas, the main principal angas of bhakti, which is chanting the holy name, living in a holy place, reading the Srimad Bhagavatam or the Bhagavad-Gita, or other corollaries of the Srimad Bhagavatam, associating with the devotees like we're doing here today, deity worship, as we see we're doing here, as many of you are doing in your homes. So if we kind of overcomplicate devotional service, then things can get a little, clouded. But if we stay to the simplified nature of devotional service, which is trying to perform these angas of bhakti every single day, according to the instructions of the spiritual master. Srila Prabhupada has given many instructions in the purports, as well as our own spiritual masters have given instructions of how to perform devotional service. If we continue to perform these services, then we can gain so much deep satisfaction, and we can actually become very loving towards everyone in this life. And also, we will not be fearful anymore. Because when regular people read this, it seems like it's very negative, or like the cup is half full, not half empty rather. That it's talking so much about death. Just really in the very beginning, it's talking about death so much. But actually, when we think about this, when we understand the Bhagavad-Gita, there's so much more to life than just thinking about death. There's actually it opens up the whole spiritual world, this devotional service and Krishna's pastime, as we are in the Kartik month. It's such a beautiful pastime, the pastime of Damodar and Mother Yashoda. If any of you have read, there's a wonderful commentary on the Damodarashtaka, actually. Many people don't know this. Sanatan Goswami wrote a commentary on the Damodarashtaka. And so in that commentary, it says a lot of details about the Damodarashtaka, the story that's happening in that Ashtakam. And so maybe we can get into that later. But before that, I wanted to continue talking about what I was talking about earlier, about thinking too much about death is, it may not be something that you speak about initially to someone who is very new to Krishna consciousness. Of course, you don't want to scare people away. These people are only talking about death. They don't talk about anything else. But you start out with understanding that we are not the body, we are the soul. Our satisfaction will come from connecting with the Lord and His holy name. Just like in all religions, it says that hallowed be thy name. The Lord's holy name is to be chanted and to be sung loudly. These are the parallels we see in the different religions. And of course, in Krishna consciousness, we take it a step further, that actually we can have a relationship with the Lord. We know who the Lord is. We know where He is. We know where He lives. We know what He's doing at every time of the day. We know what His devotees are and what their characteristics are. So these are very intimate topics that we can study even further from the Bhagavad-Gita here, as it says in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita. But we have to understand this first. Sometimes it may seem, why do we always talk, oh, we're not this body, we're not this body? Okay, we might say, we hear it all the time, but who has actually realized that, right? Are we still acting in such a way that I'm not this body? Or when your son steps on your foot or something, you're getting angry at him. Okay, but Dad, you're not your body, so why are you angry? Of course, it takes time to think like that and to get into that mode or that thinking that you're not this body. But gradually, as you develop Krishna consciousness, as you develop this cleansing of the heart, Cheto Darpana Marjanam, as you develop that, then we will slowly understand that actually we are spirits having this experience of human life. We're not the body having an experience of spirituality, actually. We're spirits. And so to realize that more and more is the goal of Krishna consciousness. And even further than that, it's not that we do Krishna consciousness to become satisfied or to find peace. That's actually not the goal of Krishna consciousness. The goal of Krishna consciousness is to serve Krishna and to please Krishna, to please God. And sometimes we might think that we might have so much pain or we might have so much suffering. Oh, Krishna, just take away my suffering. But this is not the highest conception. The highest conception is that let me suffer. What did Kunti Devi say? Let all suffering come unto me. It doesn't matter. It's because I think of you when I am suffering. Or it says in the Srimad Bhagavatam that Swarga Pavarga Narakeshu Alpidul Yarta Darshana, that the devotee, it doesn't matter if he's in Swarga or Naraka, it doesn't matter. He is always satisfied in Krishna consciousness. As long as he's able to serve in Krishna consciousness, it doesn't matter where he is. I mean, who of us can say that we're of that of that thinking? It's a very difficult thing. We want to be, in a nice, comfortable position, and we want to have our, comforts, which is okay, obviously. But when it comes to what we're going towards, what we're looking towards, is that devotional service with no motives, and also no matter what happens, we will continue to perform our devotional service, even if we are suffering, even if suffering comes. And I guess another thing connected to that is fear. There can be so much fear involved sometimes in life, as well as in devotional service. We don't know what's going to happen. As well, in the past 2 years we've been experiencing, we don't know what's going to happen. The whole economy could break down. We don't know. But how do devotees think? Bhayam dvitiya biniveshata syad. It says in the Srimad Bhagavatam that fear comes in our life when we think of that something is not connected with the Lord. We think that the Lord is not controlling anything. When we think, oh, the Lord is not controlling COVID, what's going on. When we think like that, then there's fear. Bhayam dvitiya biniveshata syad. When we think, the verse actually means when we put our face away from the Lord and we think that He's not controlling something. When we understand the Lord is controlling everything, whatever's happening, the grass doesn't, not a blade of grass moves without the will of the Lord. When we understand that, what fear can we have? No fear whatsoever. We have to come to that platform of Krishna consciousness and of no fear. So Arjuna was very fearful of what was going to happen. He didn't want to have to fight his relatives. But Krishna told him, these relatives, they are already killed. They're already killed by me. You have to simply perform your duty, not be attached to the results of your actions. That you're entitled to the work, but you're not entitled to the fruits of your labor. And so this pacified Arjuna. Of course, so on, he gave his rebuttals to Krishna's different points, and there was a back and forth. But ultimately, Krishna told him, "You have to surrender unto me and do not fear." And then at the end, he told him, "I'm your friend, and you can do whatever you want, but I'm just telling you as your friend." So this is also the importance of accepting a guru. Tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshina. That one should approach a spiritual master, serve him, ask questions unto him. They can show you the truth because they are experiencing that truth. So this is another very important part of devotional service. Rupa Goswami in his 64 Angas of Bhakti, one of the first two, I believe, or the first Angas is to take shelter of a guru and to take initiation from the guru. Sometimes we think, the first Angas of Bhakti are chanting the holy name, doing deity worship. Of course, those are important, but those are not the first ones. The first ones are Guru Pada Ashraya and taking initiation from the guru. So this is sometimes devotees think when we take initiation that this is the end of my devotional life. I've done it. I've made it. Now that's the end. I can chill. But this is actually the beginning of devotional life, right? We get the name, we get the beads, and now everyone's congratulating us, and then that's it. We forget about it, right? No, it's not how it is. This is the beginning of devotional life. Those who are not there yet to find a guru, Srila Prabhupada didn't take his guru until ages, I think it was 33 or something. There's no rush. When you look at it in the ultimate, the infinity time, there's no rush in that. But that's something that's very important that we all have to do. If you're serious about performing devotional service, if you like bhakti, the process of bhakti, then the next step is to take initiation. And what does that mean? How do you pick a guru? Is it because you like the way they sing or like the way they talk? Those are not the only things. Those are very wonderful things. But it's also how have they, when they communicate devotional principles, do they change your heart? Do they make you feel, I want to become a better devotee? I'm feeling very inspired by that. It can be that, some devotees didn't even see Srila Prabhupada. They didn't even meet him, but they took initiation from him because he was still on the planet. They heard his classes and they felt, this is who I feel like my guru is. So this is a way of understanding. Of course, there's so much more to Guru Tattva than just that, but I just want to underscore that in the Bhagavad-Gita, Krishna was like Arjuna's guru, and we all need spiritual guidance, not just that it's not just initiation, but it's also shiksha. So there's two things, shiksha and diksha. Diksha means that formal initiation, and shiksha is that instructional guidance. We all have shiksha gurus in our lives. We can have unlimited amount of shiksha gurus, actually, that those who help us in Krishna consciousness. And so when we take the guru's teachings to our heart, the main thing being the chanting of the holy names. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Of course, actually, it says in the Srimad Bhagavatam that you don't actually need to take initiation and to chant the holy name of the Lord. But what is the reason for taking initiation? The Lord wants his devotees to distill his teachings to those people who don't have Krishna consciousness. He wants those people, his devotees, to become gurus. And so Lord Chaitanya himself, Krishna himself, who came as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who we see on the altar here, Sri Sri Gaura Nitai, he himself, the Lord himself, took initiation. Even as Krishna 5,000 years ago, he himself also took initiation. So we follow in the footsteps of the previous gurus and acharyas, that we also strive towards that. What point was I making before that? Anyone remember?
Initiation.
Yeah, shiksha. No, but anyways, what? So yes.
Chanting of the holy name.
Right, chanting of the holy name. Thank you. Yes. So chanting of the holy name is so incredibly important that it's one of the angas of bhakti, of course. as well as when you take initiation, you give a vow of chanting certain amount of rounds. So this is a very important part of Krishna consciousness. And why is chanting the holy name of the Lord so important? Cheto darpanam arjunam bhava mahadavagni nirvapanam. This is the cleansing of the heart. The heart is like a mirror, and for so many millions of lifetimes, it's been covered. And now with the chanting of the holy name, we can cleanse the heart and understand, just as we see a mirror, we can understand who we actually are, that we are Krishna, the servants of Krishna. And so with chanting the holy name in this very potent month of Kartik, so Kartik is the 4th month of the Chaturmasya. This is very important for devotees of Krishna, for Gaudiya Vaishnavas. This is actually the most important month. This is when devotees, do different vratas, niyama seva they call it. During Kartik, whether it's chanting extra number of rounds, singing some stotras or ashtakams, and singing the Damodar Ashtaka, offering a lamp to Yashoda and Damodar. These are different vratas that we can do. And I look forward to this a month all year because it gives you an excuse to do more devotional service, right? Sometimes in our mind we think, oh, I don't want to do extra things, I just want to do what I have to do and that's it. But days like Ekadashi or now the whole month, it's like you could give your mind an excuse. Hey, listen, mind, it's Kartik. I'm giving an excuse now that I can do more devotional activities. This is the beauty of devotional service, that it's our expression of our devotion to Krishna, that we can do all these different activities in Krishna consciousness. So another thing mentioned in this purport was that the proper duty. He did not deserve to break the law, thereby becoming subject to the reactions of sinful acts, of which he was so afraid. So Arjuna was so afraid that he was performing some sinful activities by killing his relatives. But actually, Krishna told him, you're not performing any sinful activities. This is your duty, and this is being ordained by me. I'm telling you to do this. And so this was his duty. And even if he said, I'll become a sadhu, I'll go live out, I want to just go to the mountains and just live there and not do that. But Krishna told him, you're a Kshatriya, this is your duty to perform. Even if you perform that duty perfectly, still it won't be beneficial for you. So we all have different duties in our life, whether we think of ourselves in a certain varna or ashrama. Every one of the varnas and ashrams has certain duties we have to perform. But the duties of Krishna consciousness go beyond this. This is like Daivi Varnashram. This is the Varnashram. Everyone knows what Varnashram is, Varna and Ashram. But Daivi Varnashram means the divine Varnashram, the divine duties of the human being Krishna consciousness, Krishna conscious activities. This goes beyond all this. Hearing and chanting, Shravanam, Kirtanam, these are things that go beyond all these designations. When we don't continue to have these designations, actually the goal is to give up these designations. I don't, just like we say before Didi worship, Naham Vipuro, Nachanapani, Vaishnava, Shudra, Nam Varcha, all these different verses that I am not a Brahmana, I'm not a Vaishya, I'm not a Shudra, I'm not a Grahastha, I'm not any of this. Gopi Bhartrupada Kamalir Dasa Dasa Anudas. I am the servant of the servant of the servant of the Lord of the Gopis. So this should be what we're striving towards. Of course, in our lives, we have to live our life and be responsible. But when it comes to what we're striving towards is Gopi Bhartrupada Kamalir Dasa Dasa Anudasa. That I actually don't have these designations, these upadhis. Sarva upadhi vinir muktam tadparat nirmalam. That I don't have these upadhis, I don't have these designations. I need to give up these designations ultimately. Even the designation of being a, for example, a man or a woman. We're all prakriti. When it comes to philosophically, in theology, we're all prakriti. Krishna is the only Purusha. Krishna is the only man, enjoyer, so to say. We are all to be enjoyed by Krishna. So even this conception of man and woman has to be given up. I mean, that's like even mind-blowing to us because we're so much in our bodies. Like I identify so much with being a man. I identify so much with being a woman. So these actually things are other things that have to be given up in Krishna consciousness. I don't mean to talk so much about things that to be given up, but actually there's so much to be accepted as well. Things to be favorably accepted by, just as it says in Rupa Goswami, that we accept things that are favorable for Krishna consciousness and we reject things those are things that are unfavorable for Krishna consciousness. So what things are favorable? Patience, enthusiasm, things like that. Unfavorable, collecting too much or following too much the rules and not understanding the mood behind the rules or not following the rules enough. Niyamagraha and niyamagraha. So this is all explained in the nectar of instruction of how devotees should live their life. Anyway, these are a few points from the Bhagavad-Gita that I wanted to tell. If there's any questions or comments, we have 15 minutes. Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. Very nice class. So I have two questions.
Sure.
One is, if you could explain why, if the pastime is of Yashoda Damodar, why we celebrate Radha Damodar, right? Like we sing Radha Damodar. So that's one thing you can explain. And from the Bhagavad-Gita, verse, Krishna says that Jatasya hi dhruvam mrityu dhruvam janma mritasya cha. So that one who has taken birth is sure to die, and after death, one is sure to get to birth again. So what happens when we, like, if it is our final lifetime and we are going back to spiritual world? So how does that work in that aspect? If you could explain on that.
Sure. I don't know so much about, I was actually going to research this about why Srimati Radharani is so celebrated as Urjeshwari in the Kartik month, because Urja Vrat is the name of the Vrat. And I didn't exactly get to it, so I don't want to give you an answer to you and not give you the full answer. But the second question I can answer is that we do take birth again. We do take birth again. It says in some of the Shastras on how when you do attain perfection, you take birth in Vrindavan in the womb of the Gopi. And then when you grow up, you understand what your service is in the Leelas of Radha and Krishna, if that's how your mood is. So it's not that when you die, then and you are perfected, there's no birth again. But there's actually is a birth again. But it's not a birth in the same sense of this birth of the gross material body and the suffering that comes with that. There's actually a process one goes through to enter into the Leelas of Krishna, Radha and Krishna. I'm not exactly sure where that's described. It might be Brihad Bhagavatamrita, but I'm not sure. But it describes how one does take birth in Vrindavan. And one understands what one's Siddhadeha is and what one's service is, and one trains under the, whether it's the Manjari or the Sakhi, according to that. And then when you're ready, you are able to enter into the Leelas of Radha and Krishna. And also there's the simultaneous Leelas of Nitya Navadvip as well. It's not just that, okay, Goloka Vrindavan and the Leelas of Radha and Krishna, but the Leelas of Mahaprabhu are happening simultaneously. And there's a parallel there as well. It's called Nitya Navadvip. And in that Leela also there is your service that's happening according to your relationship with the Panchatattva, Mahaprabhu, and their pastimes that are happening, Nitya Leela that's happening at that time as well. I can find out for you where that's exactly written, but I heard it on a class somewhere how that actually happens. But it's a very esoteric topic, obviously, but I can tell you for sure. Yeah. If you know the answer or anyone else knows the answer of why we also are celebrating even more Srimati Radharani in this month, then someone else can please speak up regarding that.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I was just listening to Hari Parshad Prabhu the other day on the Bhakti Center channel, and he was asked the same question. I
Okay.
thought for the benefit of everyone,
Sure.
should know. So I thought to ask you.
Please.
Sorry about that.
No.
So the reason is that we celebrate Radha Damodar because this binding of Krishna originally happened in the spiritual world. And because of that, from there, Radharani actually bound Krishna by her golden waist belt. And Krishna actually was supposed to come to meet Radharani, and he always came late. So second time that happened, then Radharani got angry with Krishna and ended up binding Krishna because he came late. But then Krishna pacified her and she released him. So that is the reason that this binding of Krishna's pastime originally happened in the spiritual world. Jiva Goswami has actually given a nice description on this, and that's how the Radha Damodar comes into play. The binding of Krishna, but Krishna then told Radharani that I like, when Krishna was bound by Radharani, Krishna felt immense joy that his devotee was able to bind him, because he's Ananta, right? Like he cannot be bound by anything, but at the same time, he felt immense happiness by being bound. So he said, I would perform this pastime, but in the material world, instead of Radharani, my mother Yashoda will bind me. And that's how Yashoda Damodar pastime happened in Vrindavan. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone have any other questions or comments? Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the wonderful class, Prabhuji. So you mentioned about Varna and Ashram and how we should not, we should rather perfectly do our duty instead of trying to do something else. So how should we understand what our duty is or what our Varna is? We know our Ashram.
Right.
How do we know for certain what is our duty?
That's a difficult question because it's by case basis. We have to understand what our proclivities are. And then according to that, we can kind of understand. Of course, there's not just a very pure Varna. There's a lot of mixing of Varnas. In this Kali Yuga that we're living, there's such a mix. Like you can be like have Brahminical proclivities and kind of characteristics, but also we all have to make money as well. And that's not exactly the activities of the Brahmana, that I'm going to do this work and you pay me for that. That's actually Shudra. That makes us all Shudras. Kalo Shudra Sambhavam, it says that we're all Shudras actually, because we're going to an employer and we say, for my employment, you have to give me a certain amount of money. This is a Shudra thinking. Brahminical thinking is that I perform these activities no matter what. If whatever I get doesn't matter. It's Krishna. This is up to Krishna. That whatever comes to me, I'm going to live on that. That's actually Brahminical thinking. So as I was saying, there's a mix of the Varnas. So I don't think that we should get kind of overthinking what our Varna is, because it's actually not so important. Of course, it's important in the sense of that, we should understand what our proclivities are. Where that if someone tells you, okay, go become a police officer, and that's not your proclivity, then it's going to be hellish for you. You're not going to be happy. But we understand up to the point of, okay, let's see how we can maintain our lives, but the main thing is how can we perform our Krishna conscious activities in a peaceful way. Understanding, okay, I need to maintain myself, I need to maintain my body, I need to maintain my family. When you are able to perform that in a comfortable way, then you can perform devotional service very easily. Sometimes we can immediately go to the point of, it doesn't matter how much money comes in, it doesn't matter all this, I'll just perform devotional activities. That's amazing, but not all of us can do that. We'll be constantly in agitation. I'm so worried about how things are going to come together, And then how do I'm able to perform devotional activities in that phase? And later on in life, if I don't have a plan of what's going to happen later on, in my retirement and whatnot, then I can be really old and I'll still be trying to work and making ends meet when I'm actually trying to retire. So there's things that you need to do to stabilize your situation and not think so much about what the varna is. That's my thinking, that's my experience. I can only speak from my experience. And then when you are able to stabilize that, then devotional service can be performed without interruption, without any anxiety. And to be practical, I would say, is the main point. You're welcome. Yes, Prabhu. You can give him the microphone.
Hare Krishna, Namarasa.
Hare Krishna.
Thanks for coming here, giving us class.
No problem.
It's kind of very interesting, in the podcast, you ask the questions. No, we are asking questions.
Yeah. Right.
This Prabhuji. So just a general practical question, like in your talk you mentioned that, complicating devotional service,
Yeah.
and also drain out the Krishna consciousness, losing enthusiasm and all. So just could you give some kind of what you do in your practical life to make your devotional practice, Krishna consciousness, more enthusiastic,
Sure.
encouraging for others?
The main thing I would say is you have to constantly associate with those who are swajatiya, those who are like-minded devotees. Those you have to, it says snigdha swajatiya sadhu satovare, that those who are a little bit farther down the path from you, not super far, those who are a little bit farther down the path than you, and those who are like-minded to you. When you take their association, that's very powerful. If we take association of those devotees who are very much advanced than us, we can feel that sometimes we can't relate with that. But if you take association with those who are a little bit advanced, or even peers association, but more importantly, those who are a little bit more advanced than you, that's very inspiring, and that will push you and always keep you enthusiastic. We can never, ever stop associating with devotees. That's the main thing. That will destroy your devotional service 100%. And what will fuel your devotional service is associating with devotees. And not every devotee. It's sometimes hard to say. Not every devotee will inspire you. That's okay. It's okay. We can be friends with everyone. But those devotees who you perform those, revealing your heart to, those exchanges of devotional service, you can perform with anyone, but those revealing the heart, listening, having that devotional exchange, that's only with those like-minded devotees. And it doesn't have to be 100 people. It can be one. It can be 3. If you even have one in your life, that's very important. Someone you can be accountable to, they can be accountable to you, and who inspire you in devotional service. I would say that's very, very important in keeping enthusiastic. And also just kind of keeping yourself in the fire of devotional life. Whenever, like for example, we have this, ISKCON is like an institution that, what's the purpose of the institution? The purpose of the institution is to help you become more Krishna consciousness. The purpose of the institution is not, to raise money or to, these kind of peripheral things. The main thing is to become Krishna conscious. That's the main reason why we come to this brick and mortar building, to come together with each other, to hear and chant about Krishna, remind each other about Krishna, take prasadam, have kirtan. These are the things that we sometimes forget. We kind of get too caught up in other things, whether it's like a sociological thing or political thing or whatever it is. When we come back to the basics of Krishna consciousness, what are the basics? It's so simple. It's so simple that we complicate it, right? So it's like Krishna consciousness is simple for the simple and complicated for the crooked. So we have to have a mindset of simplicity. and reminding ourselves what is the main reason for Krishna consciousness. It's actually an educational institution. Krishna ISKCON, it's an educational institution. Prabhupada said, it's not an institution for, this or that. It's for educating people about their what their goal of their life is Krishna consciousness. So to make a long answer short, I would say it's to continue to associate with devotees. Find those devotees who inspire you and continue to associate with them. And that's the main thing. Sadhu Sangha Sarva Shastakai. Lavamatra Sadhu Sangha Sarva Siddhi Hoy. Lavamatra, that means it means 1/17 of a second. That's the actual technicality of Lavamatra. That short amount of Sadhu Sangha with a very higher Vaishnava, of course, but with our Sangha that we have here, you connect with someone, feel that, cultivate that, and then you'll always feel inspired. And also just being always cognizant of what our duties are in Krishna consciousness. If you're initiated, if you have goals towards initiation, if you want to give a commitment, then these are things that should fuel you. Your guru has given you something to do. Otherwise, what are we living for, right? It's difficult if we don't have something higher to live for. Anyway, drawn out kind of answer, but that's my answer. Anyone else? Yes, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Quick question. You mentioned the Association of Devotees, right? What does that association look like? What's the quality of that association? Because there could be a lot of nonsense going on with in the way in which we associate. Right?
Sure.
So I'm wondering what that looks like.
What is the association look like?
Yeah, like what is the kind of association that you're referring to?
Right. Okay, yeah, good question. So sometimes we can think that if I'm just hanging out with my friends who are devotees, then that's association. But actually, that's not the association that I'm referring to. Association I'm referring to is that which will help us both remember Krishna and helps us become Krishna conscious. So that means we have to strive towards performing devotional activities together. So, for example, when we come together, like for example, when I see my parents, they associate with each other, their husband and wife, but what do they do with each other? They read together all the time. They read Krishna conscious literature all the time. They do kirtan together. They eat prasadam together. This is the kind of association that we're looking for. Even with our own spouses, even with our own family members, the association we should strive for is performing devotional activities together. And furthermore, try to look for association where we're not gossiping or criticizing each other in that association. There's always that tendency. I'm not saying I don't do it. I'm saying what we're striving for is that association where our main focus is that, okay, we hang out and we talk, how's everything going with you? Everything's fine, it's good. Let's do some kirtan. Let's uplift ourselves with devotional activities. It's a very hard thing. It's a very tall order. But if you start to do that, you'll see the magic that happens in your lives and in the lives of your friends. Sometimes when, I hang out with my friends, we do, of course, we might play basketball or do something, but also there's always a time where let's sit down and do some kirtan. And then from kirtan comes, let's do some bhajans. Let's sing some bhajan. What's the translation of that bhajan? We start reading the translation. So much philosophy and theology comes from that. And we start discussing, oh, I like this point about that bhajan. I like this point. And then next thing you know, you're discussing Krishna consciousness with your friends. It's a very important thing, because sometimes we can get caught up in that we just want to do things that, life is hard. Life, it weighs upon you and you just want to kind of relax. But this is also a type of relaxation, a type of bringing peace to oneself, to one's family. And you see what happens after you do those devotional activities. You'll see the uplifting effects on your consciousness, and you want to do it more and more. So that's my experience that I could give you. Anyone else? Question? Looks like we're out of time. Yes.
Yes, bro. Nice,
Hare Krishna.
nice lecture. Bro.
Thank you.
I have one question. We are here in this material world because we wanted to enjoy separately from the Krishna. And like now our goal, you say, we should be gopi dasamu dasamu dasa. You know the word das meaning, like das is only das, only, right? Not dasamu dasamu das. Das is one who is sold. So in our day-to-day life, in immediate, like point is like we separated from Krishna time immemorial.
Yes.
And right now in our immediate relation, like one person we are like we dealing with the devotee day to day, but how we have that tendency of dasanu, like if somebody tells me, I mean, I'm telling my example, my house, like just try help me with the daily service, then I always have something for myself, like I mean I have a reservation, I have to discuss this and this,
right.
I start giving excuses.
Yes.
So what to speak about das? Like I mean, das
Yes.
is a soul.
Yes.
Like I mean, and that applies to every immediate relation that we have.
Yes.
That we have like mother, father. Like we wanted to enjoy separately, right? Like I mean, my house, my wife, my children. That tendency. I mean, even in. I mean, I'm talking myself, but I'm seeing otherwise also that tendency is even increasing more and more. So what is hope for us? Like even just like thinking that's enjoying separately from Krishna, we are here time immemorial, and still right now, like we are still hankering for our space, my life, in spite of chanting sincerely. I'm talking about myself, right?
Yes. Yes, thank you for the question. Something that comes to mind really quickly, because I know we are short on time, but so one devotee explained anartha nivritti as when you're in the ocean, you don't see where you came from, and you don't see where you're going. You can't see where you're going. So you're in the anartha nivritti stage. You're swimming, and you don't see where you came from. So that brings so much hopelessness, that you don't see where you're going, and you don't see where you came from. But we have to think that we've made so much. Where were we a few years ago? What was our conception at that time? How much far we've come when our lifetimes and lifetimes, millions of lifetimes have been where we've forgotten Krishna. We have to look in a more positive way. That, okay, we might seem like, okay, I signed my letters, your servant, Namarasa Das, but do I really think that? We're just saying that. How do we feel that? That feeling will come as we gradually advance in Krishna consciousness, and it can seem discouraging when we don't feel like that. But we have to, along with devotional service, we have to cultivate those qualities that we feel are important for devotional service. Humility, tolerance, forgiveness, all these things have to be done in parallel. It's not just that we perform devotional service and automatically you're going to have those things. Of course, things will come with devotional service. There's all these wonderful qualities, the qualities will come. But we also have to make an attempt to have those qualities. That when someone tells you to do a seva, I'm praying, I'm chanting. What are you chanting for? We're chanting for more seva. We have to put our money where our mouth is. That when someone tells you to do seva, okay, put the bead bag down and do that seva. Not that we're just chanting all the time. Chanting is the goal, but seva is also very important. Krishna, please engage me in your service. But the point is not to be discouraged. Because in the conception of infinity, we think it's all infinite, right? There's never a time where you will be like, I am satisfied with the devotional service I've done. You're never going to come to that conception. You never come to that point. It's always going to be, I can do more. What is the milk who was on the stove during the Damodar Leela? He saw that Mother Yashoda, she can give infinite amounts of breast milk to Krishna. And Krishna, who's the infinite, can drink infinite amounts of breast milk. So what is the use of my life? So he overboiled himself and committed suicide. That's what Sanatan Goswami says in his Tika to the Damodarashtak. This was the concept of the thinking of the milk on the stove. So in the terms of infinity, that we can never reach something, we can never reach the height, because devotional service is, all the time going. It can go infinite, but our minds cannot think of infinite. We're like little ants. You tell an ant about a cell phone, and you can't understand it. We're the same. We can't understand infinite. So I would say that don't be discouraged by thinking that, when will I reach a certain stage? We don't think like that. That's not our responsibility. Our responsibility is we perform devotional service, whether we get anything from it or not. We do our duty. We perform whatever our guru says. We perform that devotional service. The result is up to Krishna. Those things will come. They won't come. It doesn't matter. You're my Lord, birth after birth. It says in the Shikshashtakam, right? You're my Lord, birth after. Even if you adarshanam marmatam korotiva. Even if you don't come in front of me, you don't give me your darshan. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter to me. I will still continue to love you. So I would say.